All right, I'd like to call tonight's public hearing to order. So before we begin tonight, I'd like to hand it over to City Manager, Mr. Long, to go over a few points of clarification around this rezoning, just so that the public is absolutely clear on what is being proposed at the moment. So, Mr. Long.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification, this particular rezoning is a piece of property that is being zoned from P1 to R1. You'll see on most of the maps it's a cross-hatched piece of property. This really doesn't have anything to do with any of the other pieces of property that were, one in particular, I think that was mentioned a few times, is a piece of property commonly called the Don Scott property, which was zoned a year ago, I think maybe a year ago and a bit, to RM2, and that's not subject of debate at tonight's public hearing. It's just the rezoning from P1 to R1 of the particular piece of property that's in question.
Thank you. So I'll read my statement of the chair, and then we'll have our speakers come forward. A public hearing is organized according to Section 890 of the Local Government Act. Tonight's public hearing involves the following. Number 1, Quality of Life Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw Number 3365-2015. The intent of this bylaw is to change from business industrial designation to residential designation as depicted in Schedule A of the bylaw, and 2, Zoning Amendment Bylaw Number 3366-2015. The intent of this bylaw is to allow R1 single-family residential zone at the western terminus of Park Avenue as depicted in Schedule A of the bylaw. Every person present who believes that their interest is affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. None of you will be discouraged or prevented from making your views known. However, it is important to restrict your remarks to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. A person may make their statement in writing, as outlined in the public hearing or the public notice, and if received by the deadline, their presentation will be read by staff at the public hearing. If a person wishes to make a presentation at the public hearing, they are welcome to do so, provided that the following criteria are followed. This is necessary in order to allow for the recording of the public hearing process. The chairperson will recognize only those individuals who present themselves at the table and speak into the microphone. Prior to speaking, please provide your full name and be prepared to spell your surname for the corporate administrator. Please also provide your residential or business address. Should you wish to read from a prepared statement, the city would appreciate receiving a copy for reference purposes by the corporate administrator. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation. Please note that this is not a question period at which a debate takes place. City Council will not provide any comments on issues raised, but will be in attendance to listen to the comments presented. Should no additional speakers present themselves, the chair will call 3 times for anyone else to speak to the matter, and if no one else comes forward, the public hearing will be adjourned. After the public hearing has adjourned, the council may, without further notice, give whatever effect council believes proper to the representations made at this hearing. So first we'll call Mr. Krekik up and give a report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The subject of this public hearing is the property at the terminus of Park Avenue.
Loading.
It's loading. So it's located on the terminus of Park Avenue, and as Mr. Long has explained, it is only the property that's highlighted in red border. At the conclusion of last public hearing, Council determined that for transparency relating to the layout presented at the public hearing, which is this drawing here, the new public hearing be called, and such was done. Prior to June 8th public hearing, the applicant attended to the following requirements. Public information was held on April 15th and reported on June 8th. The applicant, registered professional biologist, followed DFO policies and provided clearance from affecting fisheries values. Issues concerning the proposed intersection of Graham Avenue and Park Avenue, which will be located here, have been resolved. The applicant will reconfigure the intersection to meet the city engineering requirement. This was also reported previously. Subject to number 4, subject to completion of statutory prerequisites for the closing and disposing of city land, there is adequate certainty regarding city land sale to the applicant in order to proceed with these two bylaws. And lastly, at the June 8th meeting, a question was raised about densification, and the applicant is prepared to develop a multifamily project on a city land should lands be acquired to the density of RM3. Now, in advance of this public hearing, I received two over-the-counter inquiries, which are included in this report. Since this public hearing was called, and following notification, which includes mail-out and newspaper advertisements, 6 inquiries were received over the counter, and 5 written communications, which are also included in attachment number 3. Since completion of my report, I received 2 more over-the-counter inquiries. I received 1 email inquiry regarding the quality of line work in the application in the zoning bylaw, which I responded to, and 2 more letters which were distributed prior to the council meeting. That essentially concludes my report, Mr. Mayor, unless you want me to read any or all of the comments that we received.
I believe council has read the comments, so we'll continue. Thank you.
That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Cricket. Okay, so we'll call up speakers who wish to come to the mic to speak to this rezoning. It's kind of on a first come, first served basis, and everyone will have the opportunity to speak. So whoever would like to come speak to the issue, please come forward now. And just remember to state your name and address for the corporate administrator, Mr. Denton.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Brian Denton. I live on 2134 Graham Avenue here in Prince Rupert. And it's sort of a question that I have, and that's that does this rezoning include the proposed extension of the road, the new road, to Graham Avenue? I haven't heard any discussion, and I see the red line and so forth. When I was attending the public meeting at the Highliner Inn a couple of months or so ago, the roadway extension from this roadway, which would service this housing development, was very definitely a part of this proposed development. So I'm just wondering what the status of that roadway is, if somebody could tell me.
Sure. Mr. Long, can I refer this question to you?
Certainly. This particular rezoning doesn't involve himself with the actual road layout design. Those are things that come about as a result of the subdivision approval process, which our approving officer will take into consideration. And one of those considerations is the extension of the road through to the existing servicing, or the existing road.
Therefore, that is not a part of this discussion.
Sorry, the mic there.
Therefore, that's not a part of this discussion, this public review tonight?
Not for specifically the rezoning, no, but it's part of the thought around the process, if that makes sense. there.
Well, more or less.
So it's not dependent on the rezoning, is what I'm saying.
Okay, so we'll sit back at another date and discuss the parameters of that extension.
There will be another part of the subdivision process, as Mr. Long outlined. There'll be how the road's going to be built and where it would be built and all those types of things.
In another public review session.
No, actually, the approving officer's authority is independent of council, so it is a matter of the approving officer's opinion as to whether or not access to lands beyond is required and at what level those standards will be required, and that's in accordance with our subdivision approval bylaw. So there is no additional public hearing per se around the actual development of those services.
Then I would just wish to state at this time then that I definitely think that should be a matter which is reviewed on a public basis, public review basis. It's very important. So regardless of what the bells and whistles and the chapters and verse says on this matter, I would just suggest that it should be a public review of that proposed extension. That's all really I have to say. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Okay, next. Welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship and council members. My name is Brian Roberts, and I live at 150 Van Arsdal Street in Prince Rupert. And my wife and I have lived in Prince Rupert all our lives. Regarding the suggested zoning or rezoning, frankly, I am in favor of it. It will provide a buffer of residential property between us and any potential industrial and commercial development which has been encroaching on us and continues to encroach on us with things like the pellet plant and the northerly move of the Fairview Phase 2. I'm not opposed to development. In this case, I am, like Mr. Denton stated, concerned about the extension of Graham Avenue. That is currently a dead-end street with a cul-de-sac that, in theory, was the end of that street. And I would like to be sure that if Graham Avenue is going to be extended at some point in time, that again residents might be consulted about that matter. And that is the point of my being here tonight. I am not opposed to the rezoning. I am opposed to potentially very heavy traffic relative to what we currently see in that part of the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker, please.
Larry Golden, 1601 2nd Avenue West. My main question would be, it's rather a technical question, which may be answered by his email because I sent it in because it was so technical. But I see in the different drawings that you're rezoning different areas to R1. If I would, on page 22 of the handout and on page 20, they're different drawings. And some of it is public property, by the way, which is a roadway. So again, it's a technical question, but I think it's important. It could be important because you have to be consistent in what you're rezoning. The other question would be, we had the first reading of the DCC, the Development Costs Subject. Yeah. Will this property be subject to it? Because it's only gone through the first reading, and so you see.
Well, for the first technical question, I'd ask perhaps I know to come and address that.
Okay, and I'll meanwhile go back to the seat. Okay.
But just to answer your DCC question, is that they're still in the process of being defined what those charges would be, and until that's ratified.
That's certainly not my question. Because it's happening afterwards, will this property still be subject to it?
At the moment, I'm not sure if it would be, unless staff can answer that question.
Provided the DCC bylaw is approved, they're collected either at subdivision approval or at building permit. So there's two opportunities to collect those fees, provided that the bylaw has been enacted by then.
Okay, that does it. Thank you.
Mr. Cricket? The question is about the lines.
It's actually included in a handout that I distributed just a couple of prior to the meeting, and essentially I responded to Mr. Golden as well. Those two lines are for two different purposes. They're not different lines. One is a design drawing, which is done by the developer, which is essentially this drawing right here. And if you look into your agenda, so the zoning bylaw, the zoning bylaw drawing, you will see that the zones are extended to halfway onto the city roads. Generally, what we do, we zone to the halfway of the road, so there is no confusion if there are two different zones abutting. In other words, what you have in front of you is correct, and the response has been given to Mr. Golden.
Thank you. Okay, next speakers. I will call a second time for speakers to come forward who wish to express their concerns regarding this matter. And I will call a third and final time for anybody who wishes to speak to this rezoning. Okay, so seeing nobody else coming forward, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the public hearing. Moved by Councillor Niche, seconded by Councillor Moreau. All those in favor? Motion's carried. I'd like to call tonight's special regular meeting of council to order. Recommendation that the agenda for the special regular council meeting of July 6, 2015 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Kinney, second by Councillor Ranhawa. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Item 3A. Recommendation that council give third reading and adopt the Quality of Life Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 3365, 2015, and that council give third reading and adopts the Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 3366, 2015. Moved by Councillor Niche. Seconded by Councillor Kinney. Discussion? Councillor Thorpson.
I just wanted to make sure we can do these both at the same time, or do we have to do each one separately?
I believe that we have them both at the same time. Mr. Mandrick, is that...
Yes, Your Worship, we are able to do them both at the same time as they pertain.
Okay.
Then I'm going to say that I speak in favor of this motion. I think that leaving that land as industrial creates an opportunity for somebody to, without having to change the zoning, to be able to do something with that property that is not in keeping with residential uses and the restrictions that residential uses would hold on the on that property. I think Mr. Roberts was very accurate and perceptive in what he had to say. I think that that the issue for many appears to be the road, and I think that that we need to have a discussion. I'm not quite sure how, and maybe the staff can explain how that fits into what happens with the with the officer that's going to be looking after, the city staff officer that's going to be looking after the actual development of that area, and to see if there is room for some kind of a public meeting or public hearing. The other thing is too is I think that we need to be maybe more careful next time we do something like this, because what we did is we asked the proponent to hold a public meeting, which was not a public hearing. And at the public meeting, the proponent gave an idea. We've asked now 2 proponents to do that, one with the church over on Manuel, and this one to show the public what the concept was and to have a discussion on that concept, and that I think both developers listened to that discussion and changed their concept slightly after that. And then we come to the public meeting, and people were saying that what was said we come at the public hearing, people were afraid that what happened in the public meeting was different than what was presented in the public hearing. And I think if we do that again, ask another developer to hold a public meeting, that we need to be really clear at that public meeting that this is a meeting just to introduce the ideas and to take feedback. It's run by the developer, and if the developer changes some items before it comes to the public hearing, it's what is presented at the public hearing is what the actual presentation is, not the meeting, so that we don't have people say that at the public hearing or at the public meeting there were 30 lots on either side of the street. Now there's 30 on one and 37 on the other, and that was a change. It was a change certainly from a public meeting perspective, not necessarily from a public hearing perspective. So I think that as we struggle our way through this, these are the first really 2 major developments we've had in years, that we need to try to ensure that we are clear and that the public is clear on what the process is, because I think part of that was a process issue. Gee, I'm really echoey today. So I do think that that this is in keeping with the Graham Avenue neighborhood. I believe the lots are going to be large. I think that's what the consideration was to be, to have large lots on one side. It's going to be smaller lots according to the presentation on the other side. But I guess the final and last thing I have to say is, I do share the concerns of some of the people that have written into council saying that things can be changed. All I can say is this protects it. They can only be changed insofar as any other residential neighborhood can be changed. That the lots, they still have to subdivide the lots, but it is residential, and so they can't build a pellet plant in a residential area. So it is keeping in character with the neighborhood, and I think that is important, that we are keeping in character with that neighborhood. And the road is another issue, and I guess we have to discuss that separately. It's certainly implicit in this plan that there will be a road and to allow this to take place. There needs to be a road, so that's implicit in the plan, but it's not part of the rezoning. I think that we just have to be careful about the road and have that discussion.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Last meeting I brought up the road. I'll bring it up again. They said the road is 99% sure it's going in. I know we cannot force them to put the road in, but I echo Mr. Denton and Mr. Roberts. They're not opposed to the development. They're not opposed to the rezoning. They're concerned about this road. This road, I think, is crucial to any development in that end of town. Very crucial, because it's going to alleviate a lot of traffic on already very congested roads for that area. And I also think we have to address the traffic that's on those roads now. We've been approached by people in that area already, and nothing's been done that I can see yet. I sat one night out there and watched people going down that road extremely fast. And it's something that the neighborhood has been asking for. It's something that we can address. And then the road is crucial. You heard from the people in the area. They're not opposed to rezoning or development. They're opposed to, or they are very opposed to not having that road. It's crucial to this development. It opens up that whole area to a secondary access to a very limited access right now, 2nd Avenue Bridge and Vernars and Atlin and Graham. And I think this road is just a dream come true if we can get it in.
Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Mr. Brain. I agree with Councillor Cunningham because I know our bridge isn't going to take much more anyway, so we've got to be very careful there. If there was any heavy trucks and stuff, keep going.
Other comments? Councillor Moreau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to clarify, Mr. Long, that this is the two things we're doing here is rezoning from P1 to R1, but also an OCP amendment where it's currently zoned, or where the expected land use is industrial. Is that right?
That's correct.
And just the other point of clarification is currently all of Graham Avenue is zoned R2. And this one in particular, or the proposed revision is R1, which is less density. But I was just wondering if you could give a bit of clarification as to what exactly is the inherent difference between R1 and R2.
I prefer the planner to actually do that, but I think it's duplex versus single family lot. But did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So your density is of R2 is obviously twice the density of R1.
Are there comments, Councillor?
That was just the clarification I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments from council? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to call question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Item 4A. It's a recommendation that Mayor and Council proclaim that Prince Rupert is a child-friendly community. Moved by Councillor Kinney, second by Councillor Cunningham. I'll quickly speak to this. Previously, the city has declared themselves a child-friendly community, or friendly community, and Ms. Toy from Success by Six wanted this current council to also just state the declaration. And on May 11th, this Saturday, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. there will be a kind of a celebration in the Mariners Park, and where I'll read the declaration out there. This is also coupled by Success by Six, and is looking to look at more policies around how we design child-friendly neighborhoods and things like that, so that we encourage developers to design any development that has children in mind. So that's kind of the intention around it, and just wanted to quickly speak to it. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to call question. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And lastly, I'll have Mr. Mandrick read out a resolution from Closed Meeting Council regarding a RFP award for Airport Master Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was moved by Councillor Kinney and seconded by Councillor Niche that Mayor and Council approve the recommendations of the Economic Development Officer and award the Airport Master Plan RFP to WSP Canada Inc., and that Council release this information at the next open meeting of Council, and that was carried by all.
And perhaps I'll have Mr. Long, if you'd like to maybe explain to the public a little bit more about what the master plan it is and what it would entail, so that people can get a clear idea of what we're moving on and what direction we're moving on with that.
Certainly, Your Worship. Obviously, with the advent of large industrial development, it's apparent that we need to probably relook at how we're thinking through the planning of our airport. In addition to that, how we actually deal with getting people from the airport to Prince Rupert. So we really are looking at the entire chain of or process that we use to get people in and out of the community. And as a result of that, it was important to move forward under Council's budget for major projects to look and plan the airport out, taking into considerations a lot of the interests that have come forward from these major proponents. And so that should include not only what are we going to do at the airport, but what are we going to do on a longer term, or probably more the medium term, with respect to the way in which we use the ferry, and when and how we connect back and forth in terms of trying to make that more efficient and more effective for the community to move people from, or the transportation link between people flying in and people getting to Prince Rupert. So that's really what we're hoping to have, a number of options about how we're actually managing the movement of people from the air into town and back again.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Any inquiries from council? Councillor Cunningham?
Both Councillor Neese and I had a concern about that burn house on 7th West. We were given CIBC an extension to decide whether they were going to tear it down or fix it up, and it's been quite a while now, and nothing's been done about it, and we've had inquiries from people in that neighborhood about it. Does anyone in the city know what's going on with it?
Ms. Baumann?
We'll certainly inquire with the party in the city that was dealing with it.
So no status update yet, but I'm sure by next council meeting we'll have something. Is that okay? Councillor Niche?
I just wanted to throw a shout out there to the firefighters who have done a great job stopping the fire in Port Ed, and also New Moon Restaurant. Just want to say thanks for your hard work, and glad you were there.
Absolutely. Thank you. Other inquiries from council?
I just have a brief report, Your Worship, on how things went at the homeless, I shouldn't call it homeless, it was the Housing Needs Survey and block party that went on, I guess, last week. My weeks might be getting together here, I'm not quite sure, but I believe it was last week. Anyway, it was, we served up, I think we served up around 300 hot dogs when all was said and done. So that's a good number of people certainly came through that. I think Mr. Krekic was saying we had over 120 surveys that were filled out, and some people filled out surveys as a family instead of just each individual member filling out surveys. So, I think some of them represented more than one person. And I think it was a great success. The total cost was just around $300. We had donors from Safeway. Actually, I shouldn't start mentioning them now because there's so many businesses that donated in town, and I think we're going to put a thank you. The Aboriginal Homelessness is putting a thank you in the news. In the newspaper, but I wanted to make a motion that the city write a letter of thanks to all of those volunteers. I think there were some 30-odd volunteers from different organizations around town that helped make this thing go forward, and also a letter of thanks to the individual businesses that helped through their donations, not only of food but also of products, toiletries and that kind of thing, that people that are in need of housing many times can't afford to buy. So I think that it was a great success, and that's what my motion is that that the city write a letter thanking everybody, all the volunteers, both businesses and individuals that contributed.
Seconded by Councillor Niche. Okay, all those in favor? Motion's carried. And just on that note, then I'll just, the Go Plan survey is complete as of last week, and now there's going to be a big tally of information, and sometime near the end of summer, early fall, most likely in the summer, we'll have a release of information around the LNG Go Plan and all the results that we got from the survey and that type of thing, so that the public can get a much more in-depth view of what our strategy is around the LNG Go Plan and why we conducted the LNG Go Plan survey. And I also wanted to thank our staff and volunteers for that, who did a really great job going door to door. It was a lot of hours put in. We got kind of where we wanted to get to with the results, so it all was a good success for us. And this is a great initiative that we took on. So thank you to the staff and volunteers for that. And we'll have more down near the end of summer on the results of that process. Any other inquiries?
One quick thing, I've never done this before, but a real Rupert booster, pioneer, former council person, everything, died around a month ago, Audie Eisvik. And I don't know how to do this, but I really think that the city should recognize in some way the contributions he made to this community. They were huge, and a lot of them just, he did them and didn't expect any recognition or anything. And I was out of town when most of it happened, but I really think that we should look at some way of recognizing Audie for doing everything and how much he put into this community over the years, from the ski hill down to just helping anyone on the street. He was a person that really cared about Rupert and cared about the people in Rupert, whether you liked his politics or not. He was a real Rupertite, and I really think in some way we should look at recognizing him.
Thank you. I'm not sure how we would move forward on that. Maybe we can discuss that at another time within each other and see what we could come up with. Would that be something? Okay. Okay, any other inquiries?
I just was wondering, Your Worship, you could fill us in on the wildfire situation and on how the provincial government regulations apply to Prince Rupert according to fires.
Sure. So currently there is essentially all of BC has a campfire ban, and that also applies to Prince Rupert, Port Edward area now. So there is a campfire ban in effect, so that means no backyard fires, any fires whatsoever within the city of Prince Rupert, Port Edward, or anywhere in BC for that matter, because there are about 136 wildfires right now all across BC, and it's quite intense. And so we are advising all residents not to light any fires, even in your backyards, even in a controlled pit. Just means no fires whatsoever. So that's in effect at the moment, and we will inform people if that changes. But as we know from looking outside, it's almost 30 degrees today in Prince Rupert, and it might be a rare event, but it does apply to Prince Rupert. So does that answer your question, Councillor Thilkerson? Okay. Are there other inquiries?
I just have one last thing to say, and it's just about the fishing season. It's been very slow so far. We were supposed to have an excellent season. One of the problems is, and I think it's maybe due to this beautiful sunny weather that we've been having, but the Nass River has an algae bloom that goes from the Nass all the way to the outside ocean, and there's very good escapements going up the Nass because there's been absolutely no harvesting of fish. And I think up to this weekend, a big load of fish was 300 fish that the companies were bringing in. It's just absolutely devastating. So fishermen now don't know if they're going to have enough money to get to the fishing grounds. And the price of sockeye has been halved from $3 to $1.50. And so if you're looking at, I think the average catch was 30 fish last 2-day opening. That's pretty dismal if you're looking at trying to cover at $1.50 a pound, trying to cover it. So it's been dismal, and so we all need to keep our fingers crossed that we get a little bit of sprinkles, and that the fish find the skeena. And otherwise it's going to be a real disaster for some of our poorest shore workers in town who are already having a hard time housing themselves. The housing situation is even going to get worse, as there is going to be no income coming into our community the cannery has not operated yet. This is the first time since I can remember that it is now the 6th of July and the cannery hasn't turned one can. So it is getting to be quite a crisis.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd recommend a motion to adjourn, or move by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Niche. All those in favor? Okay, meeting's adjourned.